to another episode of Morbid Vinyl. On this one, what I wanted to do is share one of my favorite Halloween stories. There was something from my childhood that just stuck with me my entire life, and it's still something that is a part of, every season Halloween comes up. It's still a part of my Halloween tradition. But what it was is back in elementary school, our principal, he did some pretty cool stuff. He helped the kids celebrate Halloween, and they made it into a thing. So Halloween was definitely something special in our school. I remember on Halloween Day, I think it was, or as close to Halloween as possible, they would allow you to dress up. I don't remember if we went dressed up or if we put out on costumes, but everyone would bring their costumes. I think we put them on in the classroom, and they would split it up. Each grade would get to do like a parade in their costumes, and it was outside of the school. They would send us around the block. We weren't going trick-or-treating or anything like that, but it would just, all the kids would all be in their costumes, and we'd do like this big loop around the school and around the neighborhood, and it just felt special for all the kids. It was like, oh, we're doing this big great parade, so that was cool. And then after that, what would happen is at lunchtime, we remember just going into the cafeteria, and I remember 2 years of this specifically. I don't know why I only remember 2 years of this, but so we'd walk in, you go into the cafeteria, and all the lights are off, except for the actual the lunch ladies area, where they were serving the food and everything. Those lights were on, and it was just enough to cast enough light out into the cafeteria so you could see where you're walking and stuff. But it was still dark. Especially like the far corner of the room, it was just like almost pitch black back there. You would walk in, you sit at the table, so you're in this dark room, and that's just creepy enough as a little kid. The only other lights in the room would be one jack-o'-lantern lit up in the center of the room against the wall. And it was just so cool looking. It wasn't quite one of these. It was actually one of those more vintage blow mold ones. I think it had the body to it, and then the jack-o'-lantern head. So that was just up high on the wall. And then he had a record player up on a stand. And as you got in there, during the whole lunch break, he would have these Halloween stories playing, these old classic Halloween stories. And it was just the coolest thing. You're sitting there eating your lunch, and you're listening to these spooky stories in the dark, and it just made such an impression. All the kids loved it. I mean, it was just, I remember the following year hearing, happening again, and everyone was looking forward to, like, I hope he's got the stories playing. Oh. So, yeah, it was our principal. His name was Mr. Dunn. And I just wish my mother actually worked for the school system, the one I went to. And I do remember bringing it up years ago. And I think he passed away about 25 years ago. I just remembered that just now. But I remember saying to her, I'm like, I would love to just meet him again and just say thank you for that. Thank you for what you did, because that just it was just such a cool atmosphere for Halloween time. And like I said, I've always been obsessed with Halloween since being a little kid. That just made my childhood Halloween experience that much more. It was just so cool. So it's just, like I said, it's something that stuck with me all throughout my years. Every once in a while, Halloween time, when being a teenager, Rich George was there, from morbidvisionfilms. We'd mention it. Also, it was one story in particular. We would probably get through maybe 4 stories because they were very short during our lunch break, but there was always this one story they were really very kid-friendly. Most of the stories on this album, but there was one story that really stood out that was very eerie, very creepy, and we would say, one of us, throughout our lives, actually, still to this day, I'll say it because it's always on my mind, I'll do a passage of that story, and Rich George will be like, yeah. He'll just be like, I remember that, that's awesome. So it stuck with him as well. It's just a perfect memory. And eventually, sometime in the 2000s, once YouTube got a lot bigger and bigger, I was like, it popped in my head, like, I gotta see if I can find that story. And I typed it in. I didn't know the name of the story, but I typed in what I could, and I couldn't find anything. A few more years passed, I think like maybe 5 years from then. And then I typed this title in again, and also there it was. I'm like, I think that's it. Oh my God. And I play it, and it's the story I hadn't heard since my childhood. And I was just like, oh my God, I found it. I can't believe it. The name of the story is Skinny Toe. And it just always, there's other variations of it as well. There's other Halloween albums that have different variations of this. But so I listened to it, and it ends up being a lot shorter than I remembered. It's only like 2.5 minutes long, but it felt like this huge epic story when we were kids. So then, but what the great thing about it being on YouTube is, the picture with it. Now I saw the cover of the album. I never knew what the album was. So now I knew it was called Scary Spooky Stories. So I went on eBay, started searching for it. I think the very first time I went on there, actually, I found it. It came up. I was like, oh my God, there's the album. That's the album that I want that has this story. I can finally find it. I want to own it. I mean, granted, I could already listen to it on YouTube all the time I wanted, but I wanted to own the album. I mentioned in the vintage Halloween albums, a lot of them I got for like $5, $10, maybe $20 was the most. This thing was $50, and I wasn't totally invested. I wasn't even collecting vinyl yet at the time, really. I hadn't gotten back into vinyl, but I was like, oh damn, why does it have to be so expensive? So I think I saved it. I put it on the favorites, and a couple of months later, it's my birthday. And I'm opening up presents that Stacy was giving me. And then I open it up. I'm like, oh my God. She bought it for me. So now I finally owned Scary Spooky Stories. So this is the album. This is that long lost album with that story that I loved from my childhood. And I finally own it. And yes, this is the most expensive one I had to buy because this was like $50 and then shipping. But I think I got my point across how much I loved it, how much I wanted to own it and be able to play it again. So yeah, I think this one is actually very old. This one's like from the early 60s to the 50s. I have my glasses on, so I'm about to try to find a date on this right now. This was put out on Troll Records. Unfortunately, it does not come with the jacket. You think for $50 you get the jacket, but no. But that's it. It's got the bats on it and stuff. So cool, very cool vintage Halloween album. Like I said, this one was definitely obviously made for kids. So most of the stories, they're very child friendly, kind of goofy almost. But then there's that one story. Where is it actually? Yeah, it's called The Skinny Toe. And that's the one that makes this album. I don't know if maybe they might even make that one story might be the standout that makes this a collectible. So that's the back of the album. Just cool vintage, bats and creepy Halloween stuff. So the story itself, I mean, I'll recreate a little bit of a telling of the story. So the story is about an old woman who lives on a farm all alone. Her husband's passed away. She has no kids, no family. And the only time she ever sees anyone really is she grows pumpkins. So in the autumn time, people would come because she grows the largest pumpkins around. And then there's one day, she's out planting vegetables out in the farmland, and once she starts disturbing the ground, she finds something in the dirt. She bends down, picks it up, and it's a skinny toe. Very odd thing to find in the middle of the dirt out in the field. She looks at it, just this strange, odd-looking toe. So she's just like, oh, this is interesting. So she takes it, she puts it in her pocket, and she finishes up her chores, and then she goes into the house, takes the toe, puts it in a little jar, and then just puts it up into the cupboards in their kitchen. Doesn't think anything of it. Then later that night, she goes to bed, and she starts thinking about the skinny toe sitting in that jar. And then a storm starts to roll in, and the wind starts to blow, and she starts hearing every little sound, all the wood creaking in the house, everything, and it just starts to put her on edge a little. So she tries to clear her mind, and she tries to go to sleep. She does eventually fall asleep, and the wind starts to slowly die down. But then moments later, she's woken again. She hears something. She starts hearing the wood creaking of the stairs. She can hear footsteps coming up the stairs, and she starts hearing a voice in the distance. Who's got my skinny toe? Who's got my skinny toe? The woman is frightened. Her skin goes cold. She starts wondering if she's just imagining this or if she's having a nightmare, if she's truly awake or not. The wood starts creaking more as it comes up the stairs. And she hears it again, a little louder this time. Who's got my skinny toe? Who's She sat up in bed and she started listening. She was extremely frightened. Her skin ran cold and the hairs on her neck started standing up. She sat up in her bed and she just looked around into the darkness, and then she heard, "Who's got The terror building inside her started to become too much. She looked all around the room frantically, but she could not see anything. What was in the room with her? She did not know. She sat up on the bed and just listened to see what would come next.
You got it!